He was talking about Karen, who's our next guest here on 98.5 The Sports Hub, joining us on the Volkswagen Dealers Expert Hotline, Karen Guregian of MassLive. Karen, you got a nice little welcome from Mike Vrabel today on your Drake May question.
I did, Joe, but let me tell you, Mike is going to need a lot more than an old age drug to help him out in this situation.
All right, so let's start there. I wanted Ben Johnson. The way that Mike Vrabel handled himself today, though, I really was comfortable, at least from what we've seen over the last year or so. Mm-hmm. I wanted Ben Johnson for the simple fact that he can help elevate the quarterback to basically make everyone else better. Now, Vrabel comes into a situation where he just needs to restore a lot of things, but you're right. When you ask the question, he's talked to Drake May. I'm kind of wondering how he can impact Drake May right now.
Well, the whole thing with Drake May is, who's the offensive coordinator going to be? I mean, that's the biggest. That's going to help answer that question, I think, more than anything. And I think Mike also did talk about helping the quarterback more situationally, game situations, and to a degree, that's what Bill Belichick did with Tom Brady years ago during their Tuesday meetings. I think Bill went over what the defense was going to do to Tom every week and tried to prepare him that way situationally. And I think Mike will be very similar in that regard. But ultimately, it's going to come down to who is in those meetings every day with Drake May. Who's going to, who's running the offense? What the offense is going to look like? Is it going to be suitable for Drake May? On and on and on. It's more going to be who the offensive coordinator is than Mike Vrabel.
Karen, when I look at Mike Vrabel's track record, people will put up Coach of the Year and that he's been to a playoff and an AFC Championship game and even beat the Patriots for that matter. But he took over a team, and his last 2 years, he finished below 500. He finished 13-21, and he eventually got fired. So are the Crafts looking at this as he's the right guy or the right guy to take over and inherit a team to get it back on track and then see where it goes from there?
Well, I think he's the right guy for them for a lot of reasons. First, they're familiar with him. They like him. They know what he's about. Secondly, I think they like his his MO as a coach. I think he's tough. He's going to be tougher than Gerard Mayo, that's for sure. But like Mayo, he also has a good ability to communicate with the players. I don't want to say he has a soft touch, but he's going to be tough. They're not going to like him at the start. But ultimately, I think they'll figure out that however he's handling them has a purpose and a reason. And, he's going to beat the mistakes out of them. And we saw plenty of mistakes made and repeated over the course of the season. So I think he's going to be a very good head coach. I think he's going to be much better with in-game situations. And I think you're not going to go into a game and look on the sideline and really ever think that you're being out-coached. I mean, Mike Vrabel is that good of a coach. To me, it's going to come down to, again, what does his staff look like, particularly the offensive coordinator, and how good are they going to be at bringing talent in, whether it's landing free agents and also assessing the draft board, because those are all areas they've flunked in the past few years. So I think Mike's good enough to elevate a bad roster, but that's only going to get you so far.
Yeah, as I was throwing out that question to our audience tonight, like, what's Mike Vrabel going to do right away to help the offense? And I just said, well, maybe there's guys he's played with that can help here, right? He obviously has been known as a running team with Derrick Henry all those years. So I am curious who he brings in. He did mention, and you mentioned talent as well. He mentioned Elliott Wolf's name a couple of times. Talked about an inside joke. Maybe the inside joke is get good players instead of fast players or whatever.
Yeah, that's kind of what he said.
right. Like now we're gonna get good players.
Yeah, we're gonna get good players now.
But that basically says that he got bad ones, though, right?
Yeah, well, that would kind of be the bump on that remark, yes. But I was still kind of left curious as to how this relationship with Elliott's going to work and how long. I mean, I think it's understandable that you want the front office people in place through the draft. I mean, they've done all the whole. Mike Vrabel can't come in now and all of a sudden be an expert draft guy. I mean, there's people in place who evaluate players and put together a draft board. I mean, Mike is at the mercy of the people who've already done the homework. What I'm going to be curious to see is when the draft and free agency is over, when they get through this cycle, will he bring in his people? So, I mean, that's going to be the thing, because, I don't know, arranged marriages rarely work, Joe, and this is actually more troubling to me, than how he's going to handle Drake May, is how he's going to get along if it's a forced marriage with Elliott Wolf.
Huh. I wasn't thinking about that, because he, obviously he's going to bring in his own guy. And it's been reported that this grading system, I don't know if you have anything for me on the Elliott Wolf grading system that's been implemented this year, but it seems like Robert Kraft's behind it and they're going to go with it this year.
Well, what I can tell you is it's a much more modernized version of draft boards or grading systems, or maybe it's just something that's completely different than the draft board Bill Belichick used. The draft board Bill Belichick used, or how he wanted Scott Pioli or whoever, the scouts, to rate players was based on fit. It was based on all the things Bill Belichick wanted in his players, number one, and number two, how they would fit in the schemes he was running. They were running both offensively and defensively. So Bill Belichick's draft board was typically much smaller than most. There's only maybe 40, 50 guys on it, because those were the only players that were specific to what Bill Belichick was looking for. Mm-hmm. Most other draft boards are like a regular rating system. Who's the best at each position? 1 to 10, 10 to 1. And they ranked players based on how good they were evaluated. And I think maybe that's why you saw, some wide receivers slip down the board or weren't even on the Patriots board because they didn't fit the Belichick system way or whatever he was looking for.
Yeah,
did I explain that?
Yeah. And listen, they're going with it, so maybe Mike Vrabel throws that whole thing out at the next draft. We might need more on that grading system down the line there, Karen. So
or maybe he's more from the Belichick school that wants fit.
There you go.
Right?
And he talked about that today, being good at one thing. I don't know. There's only a few Patriots that are truly good at that. We're talking about Karen Guregian. She is of the MassLive, columnist over there. I know you've had a relationship with Gerard Mayo over the years. Have you heard from him, talked to him, and did you feel like at all that the Crafts and everybody wanted to just sweep the Gerard stuff under the rug and move on from it? Because that's my feeling from today.
Yeah, I think, I think, I think the way they went about it. I mean, I think they had that release all whipped up. It was so well written, and the fact that it came out an hour and a half after the game. I mean, this was in the works. They didn't just decide after watching that game, the last game of the season, where they lost the first round pick and beat the Bills. They didn't decide right then and there that was enough. This was weeks in the making. It was, I was going to say, months in the making, where I think the Crafts were seeing that, things weren't working as they had hoped. And I do think they do listen to fans. I do think when they're at home games, they can hear the fans booing. They heard the fire Gerard chants. They look around and saw the empty seats, and I think that had an impact on them. Do they stay the course and, basically come back with a coach that the fan base came to dislike over the course of another losing season? Or do they try and flip it around and go with more of a sure thing as a head coach in Mike Vrabel?
Yeah, just the whole Gerard Mayo thing. I know you're a reporter, so I'm going to ask. You can report on it or not. You can feel free to give an opinion, but what do you think the intentions were the final game of the year? You mentioned that this was probably in the making, but did them winning or losing had anything to do with him coming back or not?
No, I don't. I mean, and I don't. I think perhaps Gerard might have gotten an inkling that something was coming based on Adam Schefter's report.
Okay.
Right before the game, right? It didn't come from the Crafts. I think it came from reports, and I'm sure someone in the family might have said, "Hey, Gerard, it's not looking good for you," based on this Schefter guy. So
that's an opinion, right? Not a report.
It's not a report.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
It's not a report.
Okay.
I'm just like putting two and two together,
yeah.
Joe.
Yeah. I just don't want to hold you to it. Don't want to hold you to that.
But, I think it's not like they go into a game and say, okay, we're going to do everything we can to lose. But if you look at what they did, they went with the third-string quarterback. They went with a ton of subs. They didn't really play starters hardly at all, except at the beginning. And I just think Joe Milton was too darn good.
Yeah.
And Buffalo certainly wasn't trying.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Karen, I got one for you. You wrote this article like a week or two ago, and you mentioned are the Crafts lucky or good? I think it was somewhat the title. What are your overall thoughts on the Crafts? Like, granted, they saved the team and hired the right guys, but have they been lucky by that, or are they good?
I think the answer lies somewhere. This is going to be like a cop-out, but I believe it's the truth. I believe it's somewhere in between. I think early on, they saved the team. There's no question. They kept the team here. They deserve a ton of credit for that. But they also had the wherewithal. They blew it with Parcells, obviously, and they knew they made that mistake. But after Pete Carroll, Robert Kraft did something that I wrote personally, Joe, that I thought was asinine. Him giving the Jets a first-round pick for this guy, Belichick, who did nothing as a head coach in Cleveland. It's like I couldn't fathom giving up, talk about unproven, giving up a first-round pick for that guy. Look how stupid I look. But anyway, Joe, that turned out to be like the most brilliant decision of all time.
Yep.
along with drafting Tom Brady, of course.
I used that as content last week. I was like, Karen wrote this, and I am curious. Like, they talk about being great businessmen. I don't think the succession plan for Tom Brady or Bill Belichick was good. And I'm going to, like today.
You are 100% correct.
Yep. I'm going to bend the knee today because I do think that Vrabel handled himself well and it just looked better. But I am going to compare the other coaches this year every week versus Vrabel because that's what we do here.
Well, but make sure you do this, Joe. Look at the rosters of the other teams that these guys are coaching.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. Talent means a lot in this league.
It does, but I've been around Vrabel from when he was a player to when he was an assistant coach in Houston to when he was a head coach in Tennessee. That's a lot of Vrabel to observe, and I think he's a good enough coach that again he can elevate less than great talent. But the trick here, if you really want to contend, if you really want a chance to win, you got to give the guy some players, or you got to spend to get the players, or you got to pick the right players.
Spend, huh? Well, they're gonna have to do that this year.
It's great you have a good coach and a good quarterback, but they need help around them.
All right, Karen. I know you had a busy day today. We heard you in the press conference. Scabs was like, "Why don't we have Karen on?" He said, "You know what? Let's do that." So I appreciate you taking a few minutes. It's been a busy day, and I know
anytime for you, Joe.
I'll thank you. And I know you guys are going to be writing over at MassLive. You got anything
Yes.
good? Anything good you want to tease coming up this week?
Well, everything we do is great, Joe. But I'd look for something that I have cooking for Wednesday. Talking with someone who has a really good beat on Vrabel.
All right.
There's your tease.
There you go. Karen Guregian, MassLive. She's got a big one for Wednesday. Karen, appreciate the time. Excellent as always. And we will talk to you down the line.
Thanks, Joe.
Hey, thank you so much. You too. Karen Guregian, everybody. MassLive. Check out her work. Great team over there. If you like that clip, check out more videos from my show, The Joe Murray Show, here. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.